to the group, how do we simplify lighting?
Why would you simplify it? I mean, I think you light to get the best effect of your story and your performances. You don't want to simplify. You can only simplify it if you have a budget issue or a time issue. But there's no answer to that. I think most of us, at least I like to work with the minimum amount of lighting, because the more light you put in, the more long it takes, and the more things can go wrong, or people start to move around the set and things can change. So I think it's good to have a minimal amount of light anyway. If you could do it in one lamp, I'd do it.
Yeah.
That's how you minimise lighting. You have one lamp.
Yeah, keep it simple.
And keep it really. So I think it does, as James was saying, turning light off is the key. If something's not working for me on a set, turn the light off, and it usually gets better. It's usually if you're struggling with it, you've got too many units. And or the other way around, if I've got a lot of units, I know I'm doing something wrong. And so I think less is more, almost always anyway. And one source through it. You're in a way, if you're doing a natural scene, naturally lit, you're trying to emulate one source anyway through a window. Yeah. So one source through a window is usually what does it. And sometimes I've turned the lights off completely. And in one instance, it was very expensive to get the lights. So we actually had to build a roadway into this expensive stately home to get the lights there on cherry pickers. And I had 4 of them up on this second floor large room, and and it wasn't working. The scene wasn't working. The blocking wasn't working. And the director reblocked it, and the lights didn't work even more, and I just swung them all off. And the gaffer said, we should keep these burning, don't turn them off because the producer's here, and we just spent a fortune building a roadway and all this equipment. So keep them burning, we'll just say we're bouncing. So I turned them all round, and it was just the daylight coming. Luckily it was north-facing window, and it was fairly soft and consistent, and I thought, oh, that's it, that works. And it was just natural, literally natural daylight, and all of a sudden we were, right, it's ready, let's shoot.
Well, I just think, I suppose, if you're starting out, it's more about like if you can get a larger source and put it further away, then you've got a clear floor. You don't have lots of clutter that's going to get in the way for artists and going to annoy the director. You've got more freedom about where you place your camera. I think don't try and overcomplicate things. If it can be done as simply as possible, try and stick that, and you won't end up. Like I know when I started, I'd have too many lamps in and there'd be shadows in every direction.
I used to take pictures like when I'd have 15 flags in the set and loads of cutters and dots and fingers and dots, and I'd go, oh, isn't that good? And yeah, Gavin, we have to pan the camera, and the actor's coming through that door.
Yeah.
And I went, oh shoot, yeah, really? And I've given the director this tiny tunnel to work in. It's a beautifally lit tunnel, but it's completely useless for the scene.
It's only good for one angle,
but I think
it takes you 20 minutes to change it.
I was guilty of over-complicating setups when I started.
Yeah.
One thing, the way my kind of style has changed, essentially, I can't actually remember the last time in the last few years, I've actually lit a day exterior. When I say lit, I mean actually struck a lamp, because there's so much ambient light around. The best way to keep it simple is to know your sun path and coordinate what shots and what coverage works with the position of the sun. But I tend to take away light opposed to add light, and giving shape and mood can be achieved actually a lot more effectively by removing light. I think you always end up with a much more natural looking image, because it doesn't feel forced. It feels like it's just completely working with what's actually there. And also, if you've got so much ambient light, just using a bit of poly or a mirror or an ultra bounce or something like that. Use what's there. Don't start adding things. It's a lot easier just to take away to shape, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's to do with the advent of digital capture, actually.
But I still use it on.
Well, when Eastman colour was only 100 ASA and the sun was out, faces could be black, and you just had to do something, otherwise you wouldn't see them.
Of course.
The opposite of your situation.
But you can still introduce a bit of a bit of bounce or something. I mean, obviously.
A bit of bounce, yeah. But I can remember years ago, just having 18Ks with trace frames in front like this for outdoors, just so that you could just get a glimmer, see the eye light in the eyes, and because on film there was very little latitude. What I notice now with digital is that you can be inside a room and still see what's going on outside the room, whereas in film you could never do that. It was always burnt out.
Which is sometimes useful.
Which is sometimes, yes, what you might need.
A lot can be said for collaborating with production design in the art department as far as placing sources of light or highlights or anything that kind of can give you a motivation, or the absence of light is most of the time, in my opinion, a lot more interesting than each brushstroke at a time, and turn one light on, see what it does, and then turn another one on, and then, you know, if you need to, turn another one on, and it, you know, I think it's a lot more interesting actually just by turning things off. And collaborating with production design in the art department, you know, we don't own the image, it's owned by a collective of people. You're only as good as the locations that you'll photograph, or the sets that you're photographing. The more you talk to people, the better the overall picture will be.